The Oracle of Omaha, Mr. Warren Buffett, currently sold half of his stake in Apple stocks. And that's what we're going to talk about today in Investing Mastermind podcast. My name is Sina Lundholt.
And I'm Michelle Markey.
So, Warren Buffett recently sold more Apple stock. And I was in Omaha during the annual meeting where Buffett talked about selling part of his Apple stock, and now he's sold even more, or that happened actually in second quarter almost while we were listening to him in Omaha. He did say in Omaha that he was going to hold on to Apple stock, that was something he was going to hold on to for life. And he does still own billions of dollars worth of Apple stock, but what he recently did was that he sold part of his stake in Apple. And Michelle, what do you think about that? Because there's been so much speculation of why did he do it? And, what do you think about these news?
Buffett lied to us in a bold-faced way at the annual meeting, and I can't believe it. He's like, we're going to keep owning Apple. It's one of the strongest companies we own. And if that's true, if he really believed that, then why would he sell half of his stake in the latest quarter? I feel like that's very suspicious. And I still love Buffett, but I'm somewhat joking when I say like he lied to us. But I feel like the sense of betrayal, it's like when you agree with your partner, like, okay, you're not going to eat all the ice cream, right? And then you come back and there's only like one spoonful left of the ice cream. And you're like, hey, I thought we were going to share the ice cream together. So it kind of feels like Buffett's eaten most of the ice cream and he's left a little morsel for the shareholders of like, oh, yeah, we still have some apple, but like, I feel betrayed still.
That is so funny. Yeah, okay. So for me, I see a couple of different scenarios, which is pure speculation. We don't know why he sold. He's not been commenting on it. But one thing could be he's always talked about how he regret not selling Coca-Cola at 50 times earnings. So he's always been, talking about, oh, back in the day, I should have sold part of my Coca-Cola stake. Is that what he's doing now with Apple? Is he now learning from past mistakes and saying, okay, I'm going to do that now and not have these regrets? That could be one thing. Another thing that people talked about at Berkshire Hathaway meeting, but, of course, now he sold even more, is he creating a cash pile so that he can go and buy a huge company, something like Amazon, Google, one of those big giants that he wants to buy a big portion of. Or the third scenario could be, is he foreseeing that something is going to happen with the stock market, that, it's time to hoard cash so that there are opportunities coming soon. And what I mean by that is that stock prices will decline and there will be great sale of wonderful business, some really good quality businesses. That's kind of the three scenarios, and maybe we could try to unpack some of it in this episode. But have you been thinking, Michelle, do you have any thoughts about what do you think, why is he doing this? And of course, this is pure speculation and us just, trying to to do some thinking, reflecting on this.
Yeah, and back in the shareholder meeting in May, when he first started selling like 12% or so of the Apple portfolio, at that time, some people were saying it was probably due to tax related purposes. Like, I think Buffett gave a hint that tax rates for corporations are a little bit lower right now, but maybe they could go higher in the future. So maybe he wants to take some profits off the table now. So maybe he'll reinvest later, but he's kind of taking his profits where he can get them. And maybe he does have the intention of reinvesting in Apple if, say, the stock market goes down and he'll buy some more again at a lower price, perhaps. But it seems a little bit confusing because, sure, you could be doing it for tax reasons, but I thought that there was some prevailing investing wisdom that says you shouldn't be making investment decisions for tax purposes. That's not really a good way to go about it. I don't know if Buffett and the late Charlie Munger endorsed that line of thinking, but that was one of the question marks of like, okay, sure, maybe you're getting a better deal, less taxes now, but why does Berkshire have a cash pile of about $277 billion dollars as of mid August 2024? What is Buffett going to use all that cash for? Like, sure, he could buy a whole company and make it another subsidiary of Berkshire. That's possible. Or, like we talked about, we think maybe there could be a market meltdown and there could be opportunities to buy more. Or maybe he thinks Apple is just too overvalued, like you said about Coca Cola, and he just wants to lessen the risk because maybe people had been coming down on him, being like, why is half of your portfolio in, or the majority of your portfolio in Apple? Like, maybe that could be a little bit too much of a single stock risk. And board members maybe got to Buffett, or who knows, whatever they got to him for, of like convincing him that he should lessen the dependency on just Apple. And yet, in spite of Berkshire unwinding a lot of Apple, Apple's stock price has still been pretty up. So it's more like, even though Berkshire's been selling, maybe Tim Cook has been buying back Apple. And that's been an ongoing question to me, is who is more right? Is Buffett right for selling Apple, or is Tim Cook right for buying back Apple? And in their repurchase program, as soon as that was announced, the stock jumped from like the 170 range to now like 200 plus. So it makes me wonder, who is more right? Like, is Buffett right to be maybe behaving more conservatively now? Like, another thought related to taxes is, if some of the lower corporate tax rates are being phased out, does he think there's a certain person who's going to be elected to the US presidential office this fall? And like, say we all know Buffett's a Democrat. Let's say he believes a Democrat will be elected, and then these nice tax rates that we had from a previous presidential term will be phased out, and then taxes will go up because that's what tends to happen maybe in Democratic administrations. And then maybe all the corporations will suffer in terms of having to pay more taxes, or maybe whoever's in office in the future will put more buyback tax. Like, I think it's 1%, but maybe there's talk of it going to 4%. So maybe you want to buy back shares now while the buyback tax rate is still low. So if you're Tim Cook, you're incentivized to buy back a lot now, because maybe that 4% tax later will be not as good. So even though you're paying a little bit more now for buying back your shares, maybe that's a price you're willing to pay compared to later when you think taxes will be higher. So it's a really weird situation that's not very obvious. Like, we have no idea why these very powerful billionaire leaders and investors, why they're taking the actions they're taking. But I think that that's a bit of a warning sign nonetheless, that I don't really trust whatever's happening in the market. It feels like I shouldn't invest in Apple given Buffett liquidating so much of it. And it doesn't give me much encouragement of why he's doing that. All we know is that the best investor in the world is increasing the cash pile for some purpose. And so does that mean we as everyday investors, should we do that? Should we hold on to a big cash pile? What do you think, Sina?
Yeah, but it's a very, very good question, because I also think listeners out there are asking themselves that question. Should I hold on to my cash? What should I do right now? Should I also sell my Apple stock and things like that? And it's very, very difficult to, it's a very, very individual decision to actually, what are you going to do? But for me as a Buffett investor, I'm watching what he's doing, and I think it's interesting that for some reason he was selling Apple. Like, if I had owned Apple stock, which I do not, I would also right now be considering to sell part of my stake if I had been, holding on to any Apple stock. Maybe not all of it, but maybe some of it. I would have gone in the footsteps. And then I would also hold on to my cash and sit tight and wait. As I mentioned in the last episode, I did buy a little bit that's on sale right now at a absolutely fantastic price. But I only bought a little bit because I am kind of also waiting, like you say, it's so incredibly expensive right now, the stock market as a whole, and we've talked about the Shiller PE in the past. If you're curious about that, you could go check it out. But basically, the Shiller PE also shows us that the stock market is roaring. And so for me, there's really not a lot of buying opportunities out there. So it's not too bad to be in cash and actually watching what's going to happen. But of course, I don't want to miss out on opportunities. So I did buy a little bit. Could potentially, go further down, but that might actually just mean I can buy even more. For
Right.
now, they've gone up, especially since the Feds came out with the news that they were gonna cut interest rates a little bit, so that some of those stocks actually did go up, but it could go down again. So what are investors going to do? Should they, or us individual investors, should we stay put and start selling our stocks? And just because Warren Buffett is selling his Apple stocks, I don't think that's the signal to go sell all your stocks. So make sure to take a review of your portfolio, use some of the lessons you've heard us talk about. If it's still good quality companies, potentially you should hold on to them and not just go sell. This is not a signal to go sell all your stocks, but it's definitely a signal to follow closely about what's going to happen.
Yeah. And like some of what I'm doing is, in spite of some of what Buffett might have been up to, I've been buying more stocks, like more shares of some things that when they go on sale, I loaded up on some stocks lately, which has currently paid off. So I feel lucky that I'm up on some things, but in some ways I'm only breaking even because I've had losses in other respects. So it's a little bit of a tough slog. Like I feel like I'm not that good of an investor right now just because I'm barely breaking even on some past mistakes I've made. And I feel happy, I feel happy to be for once in one of my accounts not in the red, as I'd been like for a few years in the red in one of my accounts. And that was uncomfortable. And now to actually be kind of breaking even slash maybe at a small profit, that's kind of nice. And I feel lucky that there was one stock market decision I made that is currently panning out, and it's been pretty lucky so far, but I couldn't have predicted some of what was going to happen to that stock. I just believed this stock is too low to be this cheap, and I'm going to buy it because I know that it should be worth more. Like it used to trade way higher in the past, and I know it can come back. And maybe that's what Buffett's thinking a little bit with something like Ulta Beauty. I know, Sina, you told me a little bit about that. What do you think about how Berkshire has just recently bought about it, from my calculation, about $270 million of Ulta?
Yeah, so when it's on that small scale, as I was excited to hear it, because Ulta is a favorite of mine, but it's such a small stake that I'm not 100% sure. We've seen before that he's dipping his toes into businesses and then only to exit. And sometimes he buys more, dips his toes and buys more, and we don't know if it's him. Let me just say that it's Berkshire Hathaway, so it could and it's such a small pennies when we talk about Warren Buffett. So I don't think he necessarily had anything to do with it, but one of his investment managers, of course. So for me, I wouldn't say that from past experience, I would say if you're thinking about buying Ulta Beauty right now, make sure to do your homework. Make sure it's a wonderful business according to Warren Buffett's parameters. We've been talking about it here. Make sure that it's the current price of the stock is at a fair level and don't just jump into the stock. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I have made the mistake of once upon a time, I did do make the mistake of Buffett bought a new stock. I jumped into it without doing any research and knowing anything. And it turned out, first of all, it was not him that made the decision to buy that stock. He actually commented on it and said it was his decision to exit that position. And it was kind of a quick in and out
Oh, like
thing.
Paramount?
So
Wasn't that Paramount?
it was Barrick Gold.
Oh, okay.
And it's many years ago, so
Hmm.
that he did this, or quite a few years ago, 5 or something like that. So it was a lesson for me to not just close my eyes and do exactly what Buffett is doing. And that's also actually why I earlier said, does this mean you have to sell all your shares and do exactly like Buffett? And it really isn't, because we never know why he's doing certain things. So you really need to do your own homework and things like that. But I was excited about Alta because it is a favorite of mine. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to hold on to it, buy more, or
Hmm.
offload it, or what's going to happen. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And Berkshire's been doing that a lot with some companies. Like the reason why I said Paramount was Buffett seemed to briefly jump into that, then quickly sell it. And he did the same with Taiwan Semiconductor. And I don't know who bought Snowflake, but I've heard Berkshire sold entirely out of Snowflake. And also, not too long ago, Berkshire also sold entirely out of HP Computer. So why is Berkshire jumping in and out of some of these companies? Like, I like HP Computers. My family has owned a lot of HP computers over the years. But what did Buffett think? That HP was going to make a boatload of cash on printer ink? I have no idea. Like, but they briefly jumped into that and then quickly sold out of HP, and it's like, okay, whatever. Like, I mean, I was never gonna buy HP stock anyway, even though I like their computers, but it's just confusing when why are some of the best investors, like not just Buffett, but also his investing lieutenants Todd and Ted, why could they be buying the stuff and then they're like, "Oh, just kidding. We're gonna sell out of it. We made a mistake. Whoops, sorry." But like, do they not know so many people are following their footsteps? And if they go in and out of some of these companies, what is that showing the rest of the world? Or are they losing a little bit of they're losing some of that investing genius? Maybe. Is that
well,
like
yeah, but we don't always know the reason why he's going into stocks. Like for example, we earlier also talked about, how he had been investing in Japan, even though, we might be thinking, why would he invest in Japan? But it actually turned out, oh my goodness, it was the most genius move he made there, where he basically got some stocks for free.
mhm,
I'm not going to go into detail about that. So we don't know why he would go into Alta. I just think it's such a small position for Buffett. Like usually when if he makes the decision, he goes in big. But I do see, why they would uh go into Alta. It's like, it is a great business, and I do cheer and hope that they're gonna stay in Ulta Beauty. But I can't say, since it's such a small position. I kind of, my hopes aren't up too much, to be
yeah.
honest, about that one.
Well, and I mean, who knows? It could be a good opportunity because Ulta is down 33% from its all-time high. So who knows? Maybe there's something there that they can go back to their former glory in the stock market, and people could be getting it at a discount perhaps. So there's some optimism there. Like there's you're not the only person who's excited about Ulta. One of my friends, this Irish investor I know, we write back about some companies, and he said he likes stocks like Ulta and Lululemon, and I respect his opinion because he's a really good student of some of these stocks. So I respect his opinion. And another investor that we were both educated by, Phil Town, I know historically he was invested in Ulta, and I don't think he's currently invested in Ulta as far as I know, but I wouldn't be surprised if Phil Town sees something in Ulta again that maybe Berkshire seeing, and he's like, now is the time to go back into Ulta. But of course, he's probably not going to be public with that. But if they see the same thing, I wouldn't be surprised if someday Phil Town were to talk about, oh yeah, Ulta was a great deal again. Like just like Chipotle, he would go in and out of Chipotle. Who knows? Like, I'm not saying he will. I'm not saying I don't know anything about if Phil Town is or is not in Ulta, but I just know that he also historically liked it. And that's a bit of a clue. So if all these really good investors agree, like let's say more people agreed about Ulta, what if Monish and what if Guy Spear got into Ulta? Like that could be fun. So, like, if more of them get into it, that could be a little bit of a signal that maybe other people did their homework about this beauty store. And if we do have a recession or a market downturn in America, you know why Ulta could be compelling is because a lot of people want to have the little luxuries.
The little luxury item, the lipstick, the nail polish, it's when there's, an economic downturn, people still need the little luxury, and that's, for women, it's the Chanel nail polish or something in that luxury segment where they can buy a little bit of luxury. It's when there's a party or something like that, people would buy Coca-Cola, like a quality, maybe, in the during the weekday, they wouldn't be able to afford things like that. And you also see it with certain toy brands where people tend to, go buy brands or go watch Disney movies because then they're certain it's quality. And that's what you see in an economic downturn, that people tend to, the brands that have that little luxury item still would go up. And that's why you mention a beauty store, because we do see that women would still buy certain things, even though there's an economic downturn. But then, of course, they would also, under all circumstances, be impacted by such a thing. So, yeah.
But like, even if that happens, maybe they'll be more resilient and then come out of a recession even stronger than before. So those are the kinds of companies we want to look for, is like a Costco. Like during the pandemic, they did not lose a step. Like people were lined up all around the block to go into the Costco, and they've been a monster performer. And I sort of wish I didn't listen to Charlie Munger when he said back in like during the pandemic still, he's like, oh, if I was a pension fund manager, maybe I would buy Costco, but I wouldn't buy Costco now. And then it's like doubled or tripled since then. I'm like, oh, if only I didn't listen to the great Charlie at that moment. And I just was like, just writing off Costco entirely. I know it might be overvalued, but a part of me is like, but people are still buying there and they still sign up for membership. So maybe I should have just bitten my tongue, in spite of, feels counterintuitive. Like you don't want to overpay, but sometimes you have to pay retail price because you know it's that good quality, and that's just the way it is. Like we we have to pay retail prices for some things, even though some of us who are more cost conscious, we hate doing that. Like I hate paying full price for anything if I don't have to, but
Hmm.
like sometimes it just, the way the cookie crumbles. And if Costco ever goes on sale again, I would love to buy Costco. But yeah. So that's a little bit of our
That's
fun.
how I feel about Apple.
Oh yeah. I know, but Apple, like, I don't know, we might not get so lucky to have, like, we might never get it at the price we should really pay, because probably the price we should pay for Apple, if it's at a margin of safety, is like $50 a share, and it's never going to go to $50 a share. Maybe we're lucky if it goes to $100 a share, but right now I don't think we'll get that lucky, even if we have a major global financial crisis. But, whatever. Like sometimes you just have to be okay with a 20% discount or something, like whatever. And I know I've made some mistakes with Apple. I wish I held on to it at a lower price, but, who knows? Maybe I'll get a chance again someday. So we can't beat ourselves up over some of these investment decisions we make. We have to just try our best to learn from them and then try to do better next time.
Yeah, that's one of the things I missed out on Apple, and now it's just way too expensive. And yeah, that old story. And like you say, it might never be trading. Why did people not sell now that Buffett sold? I was kind
Yeah,
of sitting there hoping.
I know, but maybe they will. Maybe, or unless Tim Cook just buys all the Apple, but then Tim
Yeah.
Cook might be silly later on. You never know. But sometimes these decisions people make, like CEOs, they keep buying the shares at overvaluations, and then it could end up doing them in and causing them to lose their job when investors later on say, "Oh, why did you do so much buybacks when the stock was overpriced?" Like at the moment he did it, maybe it seems like it was fine and everybody's doing it. But then later on, if we do have a real market downturn and people stop buying iPhones for a while, then you'll look like the biggest idiot, that you just burned all your cash repurchasing shares, and you could have been investing in the future in the next greatest AI thingy bob that people think is going to be the next amazing iPhone thing. But that's, those are some of the decisions these CEOs make. You buy back shares or you invest in the future. Who knows? Like time will tell if the CEOs are making the right decision for the moment.
All right. Well, we're coming towards the end of this episode. Time is up, and we'll be back on Tuesday.
Till next time.
If you enjoyed the show and found the content informational, we would be super grateful if you would leave us a review and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you automatically get new episodes in your feed. We publish a new show every Tuesday.
The contents of the Investing Mastermind podcast are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. None of this is investing advice, and if you need help in your personal situation, please consult with a professional.